Hi. Yay.
So today, episode 7, my name is Stacy Tiro, and this is Changed for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education.
I'm Stacy Tiro, a high school performing arts teacher for over 25 years. I've taught a lot of amazing people. Now that so many of my students are adults, they'll teach me how, through the lessons in my classroom, they have been changed for the better.
Okay, so today I'm really excited about this person who I'm staring at. She is a graduate of the class of 2009. That was sort of a beast mode class, I remember. This person is somebody who has dance literally running through her veins, and she did from the time she walked across the threshold in the dance studio. That was the gift of the universe to me, was that someone up above sent me this well-trained, uber talented dancer beast into my little dance studio at Spring Valley High School. And she was somebody who knew how to perform, like, just from the outset, and how young she was, but she was so well trained. And she basically, she also had friends who were also dancers at the time, and she forced me to, like, up my game in the dance studio. They walked in and I was like, oh, this is getting serious now. Okay, how do I keep these people in the studio? And this, like, star-studded group of kids I had for 4 years, through our thespian shows and through our dance concerts, and we were really able to do some over the top work that I really hadn't been able to do before. So there was a growth pattern that I went through, as a teacher, trying to accommodate for these, like, really talented people. So I'm grateful that I got to be her teacher, but just the same, she was able to teach me probably without even knowing it. She went off to Muhlenberg College to study dance, and she also, went for an elementary education degree, which she shared with me that she did not finish because she didn't want to stop dancing. Then moved on to the Spark Movement Collective, where she danced, for 7.5 years, which hopefully you'll talk about that too. And now she has shifted. I'm actually going to let her tell everybody because she gave me a description of what she did, and I went, okay, that sounds great. So let's get to question number 1, which is, what is your name? Reveal your name. And what do you do now?
Yes. My name is Kristen Latrenta. I work in sales at a marketing technology company. So I work with brands and just different companies. I work with people who are already customers. And I'm working to essentially upsell them, so have them pay us more money and make sure they renew with us. But we're selling a technology for search engine optimization. So if you're going onto Google and you're trying to find the best pizza, you want to make sure that, like, your search intent is actually being answered with the quality content that you're looking for. So we work with brands and companies to make sure that their websites are optimized to ensure that when their customers are looking for their services or content that they have, that they're actually going to appear on that first page of Google, because who clicks to page 2?
Right. Right, exactly. And it's funny because after you sent me that, I Googled my name. I was like, where, how does that work? So those 3 letters SEO that has come up within the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, whatever. It's like this new beastly concept to me. I'm like, I probably need to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah. I like, it's funny because it is like a new-ish thing, and but during like the pandemic, it made a lot of businesses in general start to focus more on it, because you don't have to like, it's not as expensive and there's like more of a return essentially on it. So there was like a whole shift digitally around that.
Right. Well, and everybody was home to be able to put time into that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the heart of this interview. So getting back to yourself, and I knew Kristen as Kristen Santos, now married and Latrenta. So using your adult brain, describe your adolescent self.
It was funny. I was thinking about this this morning, and I was like, oh man, I would probably describe myself the same way. But I feel like not too much has changed other than, of course, maturing. But as an adolescent, I was definitely very outgoing. I think that for whatever reason, I had also this like extreme fear of disappointing people. I don't want to say I was like such a people pleaser, but it was more so of like whatever I was taking on, like I felt motivated to always just do the best I could be and hopefully be the best. I definitely have like reflected and noticed that I'm very motivated by competition. And then I would say I was self-reflective in a way that I always remember. I used to go on this like website called like Stumble Upon, where you could like put in your like interests. I think it was like before like any other like big social media things would come on, and you could like, I would always put in like quotes and like read about like life and stuff. And I just always had this like view of being like, you shouldn't be angry for too long. You can't let things impact you. So I was always like trying to be this very optimistic and happy person. But I think that looking back now, I didn't always let myself feel other feelings, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So it's been interesting to like kind of grow up now and like realize like, okay, it's like okay for me to process other feelings other than happiness.
Right. And you know, the adolescent, I've talked about this a lot, how the adolescent brain is just not fully developed. It doesn't get as complex in the the mental health processing arena, and they're so like into their own existences that they think, oh, well, this has to be perfect. And there's like a one way black and whiteness about their existences. And part of the reason for this podcast is kind of to offer the 10, 15 years out of that to say, okay, and now let's come back to where we were and say, and I remember being you, and in 10 years, this is what you're kind of going to be like. So just to use as a good sort of teaching tool for kids now. So thank you for being here to help that education.
Yeah, of course. I love this stuff. I'm so excited.
Okay, so let's go to question 3. What was something that happened in the studio in Spring Valley, whether it was in dance class or in rehearsals, that helped you to manage or to regulate yourself, your like emotional life?
There's a couple things I would think. I think obviously like I grew up dancing, and so I came into your studio with like a background already. So I think it was very interesting for me to then observe like my classmates who sometimes like came in and just like had ability to do things that I had already been like working on for like years, like to almost like realize and be like, okay, like just to take a step back and say like, it's okay. Like sometimes you have to work for things that other people are naturally have in life, which I don't know how that necessarily like manifested itself, but I definitely remember having like that moment of like, okay, like just because you necessarily want something doesn't always mean that you're given the automatic like ability or like facilities to like make it happen. Like if you have a passion, like you have to work for it. And sometimes your passion is not maybe where you're like naturally gifted, and vice versa. And then I think also just like with that, always like making sure you're like practicing and on the side, no matter if I felt like, oh, I picked that up in like 2 seconds, like it doesn't matter. Like there's still always room for improvement. But I think the biggest thing probably for me was I never really took acting classes or anything, but you gave me like the opportunity to like try acting in the musicals, specifically for Fame. I'll never forget. We were about to start the song like in LA,
Uh-huh.
and I guess I hadn't really like been challenged, or there hadn't really been conversations just like growing up about like intent and like making yourself more vulnerable in like putting yourself out there and performing is all about vulnerability, but I hadn't like kind of made that connection yet. And we sat down and you really like got into the meaning behind it, like what this character was going through. And for me that was like such like a moment of like, wow, like I really have to try and like find a way to relate to this like in my current life, or just imagine and like put myself in that position. And that was just like a really big eye-opening moment for me, that oh, just because I love to dance and like I don't mind being in the spotlight, like there's this other like layer to it that can like really come from like within, which I think in that moment was more so focused on acting, but it was something that I then like took with me like moving forward, like what's like that added layer of intent behind it, and how does like how like trying to become more in tune with like how I'm moving, how does that make me feel, how does this song make me feel,
Mm-hmm.
and then what is that like projecting. So
Yeah. And do you think that translated to like what you were like, you carried it forward, but did it help you like manage anything like while you were there, as you were kind of living your everyday stuff?
yeah, I think I started to maybe like take a step back. I think I was always like just my outgoing nature, and like I'm not like I've never been like a shy person. So like immediate responses to things, or just like kind of like looking at it and like what do I get immediately from like looking like just looking at something, or like here's the situation, but like taking a step back and like okay, like maybe there's another perspective here, or just like in general like taking a moment and actually like saying like this is how I maybe interpreted something, but maybe that wasn't the actual like intention behind it. I think in general that just like went a long way with like interactions with people. I feel like I then like became this person who I was like, well, like try to put like more so of like, obviously we're voice taught, put yourself in someone else's shoes, but like wasn't real, you don't really like maybe embody that until like you're able to really understand it. So I think that was like a moment for me that I then was able to like say like, okay, like maybe I interpreted it wrong, or maybe that bothered me and it wasn't supposed to, and just taking a moment to reflect a little bit more.
I love that. I wish more kids would do that. Sometimes I'm like, just stop and
People in general.
yes, that. It's true. It's true. Okay. So, I think this is just expanding on what you're talking about already. So what are some of those lessons that you learned in the studio that you now think about, you still think about today, or you use today?
I think just like I mentioned, like no matter like maybe I was able to like pick things up, and just like being in that environment in general taught me a lot, because I was used to being beside other people who were training with me for like years along, or like during the summers I was going to summer intensives, and I always had this mindset like there's always going to be somebody better, but don't worry, there's always going to be somebody worse, like as bad as that sounds, but like it's true, like whenever you're like fearing doing something, like the chances are there's going to be someone better, but you're probably not going to be the worst person in the room. So like if that gives you like a little self-confidence boost, but I think just like practice, and just like I think also this is actually what I want to say. I think it was a big moment for me as well, because being a part of just like the different performances or the musical or whatever it was, like you had such a way of highlighting different people. And it was something where everybody brings something different to the table, and maybe you don't always see it, but it doesn't matter because everyone else, once again, is kind of coming from like a different perspective, and like people like different things, or different things are going to catch people's eyes. So I think it's like even with any artwork, with writing, or any show that's like being put on, and or any speech that you hear, like you might have something that you want to get across, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your audience is going to like take that away from you. And like being okay with that, of saying like, I like tried my best to like give this to you, and maybe it wasn't received that way, and like that's okay. Like there was still something that was like taken away. Mm-hmm. And I think just like in general, because I have such like a competitive kind of like nature, and like I just am always like, even at work, like I'm in sales, like if someone else is like doing really well and like I'm not hitting my number, like, oh well, I don't want them to beat me. Like it's just like always like there. And it's okay though if what you're putting out is not necessarily being received, like as long as like they're getting something from you, like if you were able to invoke some emotion or something like that.
Do you feel like you performed better when you were kind of like at the top, or like when you're more in the middle of the pack? Like how did that affect you in real time?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't really know. I would be curious to ask someone else, but I don't really know if it always had, I don't know if it had that much of an impact. Like this is like exactly like being on stage. Like I'll never forget, like for Grease, like I didn't get cha-cha. I was in the ensemble, but I like still was like thriving and having so much fun. And I think having a moment of like saying like, oh, maybe I'm at the top, or like I know I might be like the best. Maybe it was, I think if anything, it probably almost put more pressure, because if you're highlighted in some way, you have to then really make sure you like live up to it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it like actually impacted how I was like thinking, or like actually like feeling, or what I was putting right into it.
I mean, you were always very consistent. You know, there's a lot of kids who, you know, they think they're all that, and then when it's time to like proof is in the pudding, they're not quite there. You know, they can't bring it out because maybe it wasn't there, maybe they weren't emotionally ready, you know, combination of the two. But you were always, you know, very consistent, and I knew what you were capable of, and you know, I used it in whatever ways that I could, you know, whenever I could. And 42nd Street was your sophomore year? That was your sophomore. Yeah. Grease was your first year.
Grease was my first year. 42nd Street was my second year. Crazy for You was junior year, and then Fame was my senior year.
Right. Yeah. Fame and our 2014 in the Heights were like two of the
and that was the one I remember when I was watching the first episode with Manny, like he was in the Heights, and like I remembered seeing him, be like, wow, he's really got something so special. So I think I remember you like afterwards, you like kind of comparing us, like you and Lindsay were like talking to you afterwards.
Yeah, those were two of like, I mean, and there was West Side Story, which was like another, you know, like, so we had like all these, I don't even want to call it ups and downs, because each show kind of presents different challenges, different cast makeups, different environments, and we bring out the most that we can in all of the kids. But you know, there's always like those kind of, I think teachers just have like those really memorable years where you're like, oh, that was a real achievement. And I think that for me, it was like an achievement for me, because I was able to up the ante however much. And so it was a challenge for me to make these things happen. And so that, I'm really grateful for that, because when, teachers, when you teach for a very long time, and you get into your sort of your patterns and your habits, because you're getting older, you're getting more tired, and you want to like keep producing, but it's like every year it's a little harder. So that helped me to not be entrenched in like the things that I'd always done. Now it's time to like, okay, let's wake up a little bit and present some new stuff here. So
I think it's so funny you say that though, because like it's when like as a student, you're never thinking about the fact that what you're going through or doing with like your teachers is like also like a growth opportunity for your teacher, or like they're challenging themselves. Like it's just such, like you mentioned, like that clear black and white, like tunnel vision, like me. But like it's I don't know. I like love like kind of flipping everything and like hearing like those moments and like almost like those steps and like pushing yourself out of the box as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You have no idea the anxiety level that I was like, okay, let's do this. We're doing this today. I'm like, please don't get bored. Please don't get bored. Please come back to me. I need you. True story. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to go to question 5, which is, how have you changed since you graduated high school?
I think one way is definitely, I touched on it a bit, but like I feel like I was always a very like reflective person, but maybe not like self-reflective, and being able to like process other feelings instead of always like, because I think when I was younger, I was always just like, it's okay, like why do I want to hold a grudge, like life is short, like we have to be happy all the time, like very much that perspective. Whereas like today, like a lot of my friends still say like I have to come to you because you're like so optimistic. Like I'm that person for a lot of people, which I have now noticed can be quite exhausting. So being able to like decompress and like allow myself to just feel whatever I'm feeling has definitely been something that has changed since then. Also realizing that like if something hurts me, my like immediate reaction is not sadness, it's anger. So like how to like deal with that, like that's just like I don't ever really remember feeling like angry that often when I was younger. So like when that started to like happen, it was like this weird like, ooh, like I don't know what to do with all of this. Like
how do I manage this? Yeah.
I would say I'm definitely like a lot more calm. Whether or not people think that, I don't know, but I think when I was younger, I put like a lot of pressure on myself. I don't know where that came from. It was just something that I did myself. Like I always like, my mom was always like, yeah, like one time like you came home and you had like an 88 on like your test and you were like hysterically crying. Like there's like there was like no reason. We were like, great job. Like it's just like for me, like I always just had that. Whereas like now I'm just like, I'm like sometimes I'm like, okay, don't mellow out too much and like get like lazy. So like trying to like balance that almost. And
where do you think that came from? Because like there's a lot of kids who are so hard on themselves, and it's not necessarily their parents. I think that like they take it on themselves, so their parents are like, okay, like you can calm down now. Where do you think it came from?
It's funny, like you asked me that because it's been something I've been thinking about a lot recently, like just, and also like having like I will say like I'm very, and I have no problem saying like I'm a very confident person. And like I just think like through life, like, and some of my friends like who I've met are like amazing people, and like my girlfriends who are like beautiful, and then they have these like insecurities and just like why like I don't, get it. And I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Like, I don't know. It's like those two things. Like I always had such a pressure on myself, but I think it was really just like that fear of like disappointing people. Like I just never, I didn't like it. I still am very much like that. Like if like anything even in my normal life and I'm like, I want to talk to my mom about it, but I don't want her to be disappointed. Like that still very much like lives with me today.
Right.
I think it also probably has something to do with just like, how do you like respond to like criticism? Like, do you do better with like positive feedback, or you like, do you like snap into shape if like somebody is like negative, like if they're pointing out maybe negative things, like what do you respond to? And then like if it doesn't go well, like how is that person you're impacting feeling? Like I think maybe that's why I was always so like, be happy, be happy, be happy, because I didn't want anyone else like around me to feel down. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
well, it does from the adolescent brain perspective. From the adult, you kind of look at that, you're like, yeah, dude, you can't be happy all the time. Like
right.
nobody's happy all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, but teenagers they're looking for validation. They're looking to please the people around them. They never want to disappoint. And especially like really high achieving kind of kids, there's a feedback loop. You know, they do really well. Everybody says, oh, great, oh, great, oh, great. And they're like, I need more of that. And so there's an emotional like significance to it. And then it just kind of becomes a part of your personality and the way you do things. So makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, and like one other thing, like it's been like this recent realization. I think it's kind of funny because it's like such a small thing, but like I was talking about this with one of my friends recently too. And I was like, yeah, like, you know, even to today, like when I get a card from like anyone in like my family or like my mom or my parents, it's like, to my beautiful, amazing, like kind, like intelligent daughter, like Kristen. And like that has been all of my cards, like get a card for every occasion, like since I was little. Like even my grandparents wrote like that. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, it's like such like a tiny little thing, but then you see other people and like you got a card just like, to Kristen, like love so and so, and you're like, that's it, there's nothing else in there. But it's like yeah, but it's like when you have something so little like that you always see, mm-hmm. and it's almost like, okay, like I don't want to ever like not live up to that like extra. But that's just from coming from like people who love you, like they just think that of you. So it's like, but you want to make sure you're like almost like worthy of those words.
And that you extend, you say that, and I think back to like, you know, my mom, and my mom always did that too, all the birthday cards and all this stuff. And it was always like flowery and blah, 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 and paragraphs. And I do it to my kids too. And I'm like, cause that's, you know, what I knew. But yeah, there's like an elevation that you feel from that, from the time that you're little, that's like the expectation that you feel like you have to live up to. And mm-hmm. So it's not just for your mom, but it like spreads out to the rest of the world. And then suddenly all that pressure on you to be beautiful, talented, worthy, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly you get to be like, this is a lot to have to be all the time. Yeah.
It's interesting. And I think also like just how you said, like, and how it goes to like other people, I've noticed that and I don't know if this came from like dance training or whatever it was, but I definitely have noticed that I've always had more of like or I wouldn't say more, but of some people that I've observed, like more of an acknowledgement of like authority, mm-hmm. like of when like I was younger, like I feel like it was like, there's a teacher, any adult, like even today, like I still feel like, well, they have like authority and like that needs to be respected in like mm-hmm. some capacity. So mm-hmm. I think that also plays that part of like authority. I can't disappoint them. Like they have to be pleased with like whatever I'm doing.
That's, you know, it's so funny you say that. That's like a dance studio etiquette thing. I was talking to one of my 2014 graduates who's also like a big dancer, and she's continuing to dance today. And she was really talking about, dance room etiquette, and that there's certain ways to be and certain ways to act. And sometimes it's unsaid and, unspoken. And the sort of the hierarchy that happens from the teacher and then it branches out is, important to the dancer mind. So I think it permeates everything that we do, because I had similar dance training to you over at Coupe, and there's that hierarchy
Yeah.
definitely there.
Yeah, definitely like the discipline that's like instilled in you. And like when I was teaching for a bit, or like if I'm like just like looking online or whatever, and like you see a class, or when I've gone into like sub for stuff or whatever it is, and like I see students who like don't have it, it drives me nuts. I'm like, no, you have to turn the left, turn towards the bar when you're changing sides, like all of these like little like things. I'm like, you have to do it. I'm like, what do you like? You can't drink water until after the excerpt, like whatever it is, like. But I also feel like, at least today, like some kids you see like being raised today, and just like, are they going to have like any type of like discipline and like understanding? And I'm like, the dance studio is like somewhere where I feel I learned a lot of that. So I was like my kid's going to dance and they're going to learn.
That's right. Well, and that mindset also like travels into your adulthood when you're moving into, whether it's a new job or some new like institution, organization. That like the first thing that you start to look for is not just what you can bring to it, but like, how is this organized? How is this structured so that I properly insert myself into this machine? So that's another valuable piece of arts education. How do I fit into all of this,
Yeah. No, it's true, because like as outgoing as I am, like I'll never forget, I was a freshman and I got casted when I was in college, like the first semester in like a show. And a lot of the time they said like freshmen usually aren't at least casted till like second semester, because like nobody really knows you.
Sure.
And I got casted, and like I like didn't really like speak. Like I just, speak if somebody like an upperclassman was like speaking to me, just like their dance, like observing. And then like I'll never forget, the choreographer told me, she was like, I think maybe it was like the beginning of like second semester or something. She said she was like sitting at like a table like near me in like the cafeteria or something, and like I was cracking up laughing.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, like she hadn't like experienced that side to me. But even like when I started, like anytime I started a new job, like people always are like, you're more quiet. I'm like, well, I'm observing, I'm not comfortable yet. Like I have to like make sure, like, and also it's like you want to like achieve so people can like see what you're like capable of doing, and then you can like, okay, like let the guard down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Kristen is very she has a cackle like when she's relaxed that is infectious, absolutely infectious. She's being very demure right now, but I remember when Kristen got like really excited or really tickled by something, she would have this beautiful little cackle, and I'm like, oh, okay, life is good now.
Yeah. If I did it now, like in my parents' practice, they would be like, Kristen, we could just see your tonsils. Like, so.
Close it down. We shut it down. It's okay. It's all good. Okay, let's move this forward. So question 6, what would your adult self tell your high school self now to help ease the way for you?
I think read a bit more. I think I've realized that, you know what it is Spring Valley in general is like just such a unique high school experience. And I didn't know that when I was like going through high school, of course. Like, it's just like I would watch movies and I was like, wow, like all these movies, like every high school is like so cliquey, and like that's just the movies. Like that's like not my high school. Like we all get along, we're all supportive. Like just I feel very grateful for my high school experience. And I think like also so many times, like, I would just be like, oh, like, no neighborhood is really like that. Like, that's in the movies. And then, like, I went to college, and I'll never forget, I can't remember what my freshman year seminar was, but it was like a very cool topic, and like gender identity and theater, and like that was, we just like had this like whole, like, it was like first semester, we like dove into all of these topics, and like I'll never forget, like, the first weekend of college, they had this thing called like the diversity play or something. And in my head, I was just watching this, and I was just like, that's great. But then, like, I realized, like, afterwards, we had like this deep conversation. I was just like, I'm experiencing culture shock, and that there's a lot of white people here. Like, I just like had such like an opposite reaction. Like, and I was like, I've never met so many Jewish people. Like, it was just so opposite. And like also like the amount of like wealth that is out there in the world as well. Like, to me, it was just like, oh, that's in the movies and on like TVs, but it's like, hello, like, movies and TV shows are based off of people's experiences in real life. And I just like didn't know. And I just like wish I would have read a bit more, like different books, and just so maybe I would have like, it wouldn't have been such like maybe I would have like gotten it a little bit sooner. Right. And the other thing, I think, I would say I've also become more curious. I think I was always curious, but now I'm like very like forthright in my curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
get it. You go figure it out.
Yeah, like, and like, it's just, even in like when I meet new people, like in one of our speeches at our weddings, like the best man was like, Kristen will meet you, and then she'll sit down and ask you 21 questions, like like going off. And I wish that I would have been more like that, but I wish I would have like sat down with like you or like Mr. Hooper, Mr. Ferraro, and like asked like all of you guys questions on like how you ended up where you are today, and like just simple questions that you do to like get to know people. I like wish I would have told myself, like, stay after class for like 5 more minutes and like talk to your teachers, because like there's so much knowledge you guys had, but it was just like, oh, I'm here, like, work, okay, bye, like, move on to like the next
bell rings, go.
Yeah, like, run to your locker. And so I just think that would have been something where I think I could have like I just would have been exposed to more sooner. Like, sometimes I find like you try to figure out what you want to do in life, but then it's like, even today, I'm just like, how did that person even know that was like a career option for you to like go into? Like, things that maybe I just didn't know were like options to do in life. Like, but it's too late now, or you know what I mean? Like, maybe if I would have been exposed a little bit sooner to something, like I could have found something else. Not that I'm very happy in what I do, but like I took like what was it? Anatomy and kinesiology for dancers in college. And I was like, I love like learning about like the human body and like the muscles and like this, but like I had gone to physical therapy because I'd like twisted my ankles a bunch of times. Like, I never really thought about the fact of like that being something that I could then do, if that makes sense.
No, well, because as broad an education as we try to present in schools, I don't know that the average, I'll call it the average, or the typical adolescent necessarily has the headspace to not to access it, but to like make it available to process. It's so much. And nowadays, especially, coming out of the pandemic where everybody was like in their little hole, and now being exposed to being social, and there's so much coming in that how do you process all of these different worlds? Like, you have to kind of narrow it down to, I'm interested in this, and later on I'll expand that. And that's that's what college for and graduate school. But it is hard to know what are all of the possibilities that are out there, and it's confusing. So I think that's a smart piece of advice that you could offer people, and we'll get to more advice later. All right, question 7. So what is something that you're grappling with now?
This one is interesting to me because I feel like they're almost, it's like an oxymoron. Like I think I'm struggling with saying no to like I think just finding balance probably in general is what I'm struggling with. I think being able to say no to things, like whether that's like at work and I'm taking on too much, and just being able to say no, like actually like I can't handle that. I don't know, like I can't handle that at the moment. Like, can you give it to someone else?
Mhm.
Or saying no to going out to dinner with friends one night because maybe I do want to save more money, or I just need some time to just be alone, or whatever it is. So I think just like saying no probably across the board, but then at the same time, something I'm struggling with is it's not like a consistent thing, I would say, but I have moments where I feel like, am I doing enough? Like, am I working hard enough? Am I like being a good wife? Because like this week I went to dance like 3 times after work, and like Tyler had to do all the cooking and like did everything. So like just being able to find like that balance. And then like also I think on top of it, it's like especially with like the pandemic, like all of a sudden it's like I lost time, so like I have to go and try and like do everything. Like I want to go spend time, I want to go see people, I want to go out, and I want to try and travel, and like there's all of these things all of a sudden because like we feel like we lost so much
So
time of like
much.
being, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this balance now of being able to like make sure you're like taking care of yourself, you're not taking on too much, but then just like actually like taking advantage and like making sure you're like living life and not just like sitting on the couch. So that's what we did for like a year straight. Like,
And it was okay. And it was
yeah.
required.
So yeah, definitely that. I think also like it's just with everything going on in the world, I've become like very hyper aware of like I acknowledge like I'm in like a very good place in my life. Like Tyler and I both, we had our apartment. We neither of us lost our jobs during the pandemic. We worked consistently through everything. Like our families remained healthy. Like we just bought a place in Hoboken. Like we're very like I acknowledge like I'm very like, and I'm very grateful. And I'm like very hyper aware of like people who of like just being like not everybody has this, and like am I doing enough to like give back? So it's like all of these like things like popping up. It's just like how do I prioritize and make sure that I'm like still staying like healthy and like sleeping.
That balance, I don't think somebody had said that there's no such thing as balance. Balance doesn't like really exist. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's having figuring out what you need, prioritizing that versus what everybody else needs, and being okay satisfying those things, and then being okay satisfying those things that you need to. Yeah, I think everybody grapples with that, by the way.
Yeah.
So. All right, so tell me one thing that you miss about your high school self, and then one thing that you feel has gotten like better as adult Kristen. Hmm.
I think it's probably going back to that idea of like just like the processing of emotions. Like I think I've also very much I learned during the pandemic. Like I've always said like I'm very outgoing, like blah blah blah, but I didn't actually realize like how extroverted I really was, and that like I feed off of people, like just other people being around me. So like my office opened in like January of 2021 for like if you wanted to come in, like you could. Like they were very like aware that like not everybody is in like a good situation to like be home all the time. I went in as soon as the office opened. I was like, peace, I'm out of here. And so like I was going in because I was just like I felt so exhausted. And I think something that I miss is just probably like the energy that I had. Like, obviously growing up, there's like, as an adult, there's like so many things on your mind and like considerations. And like sometimes I'm just like, just get out of bed, like don't snooze your alarm, but like snooze it. Like those, like I just wish I had like more of that like oomph sometimes. And like I think it's great that I let myself process things, but sometimes like process it and move on. Like don't let it like sit with you for like too long. Like
Right.
once again, trying to find like the balance of allowing myself to feel things and like acknowledge it, but like how do we like acknowledge it, sit with it, move on, and
Right.
be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of the conundrum of being an adult. You're like required to, in your maturity, you start thinking more outside of yourself and out of everybody else and everything else. And again, it's just so much input that you're trying to sift through and put in its right places in your brain. That in itself becomes overwhelming. So there is a freedom when you're an adolescent. It's like,
Yeah.
just be who I am, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
No, absolutely. And I think like also just in general, it's like we should all try and like keep that youth with us and try to remember what it's like just to feel a little bit more free. And then what was the other part that I think I've gotten better at?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like what has improved? Like how has Kristen improved? Now you mentioned that that you're processing things, a little bit more smoothly. And was there anything else that you feel like you've got a handle on now much better, or what's gotten better about being an adult?
Yeah. I think this was something that I probably took from high school into college, and like over those years it took me some time, but and I think just the realization that like it's okay, and that like it, especially in like I think like relationships and friendships, like I think growing up I was always very much like include everybody, include everything, everybody, but which is an amazing thing, but I didn't always acknowledge that like not everybody is going to do that. It's not always going to be reciprocated. And so like, like if you're not included in something, like that's okay. It's like not the end of the world. Like not everybody needs to be included in every single thing that's going on, and like being at peace with things. Like I just think like being at peace with things as they like change. Like if a friend if you move or you grow apart or whatever it is, like taking the time mourn your friendship, and like that's okay. Like it's just what's meant to be will be, and like we don't always need to try and like solve or try and like fix everything. So like and I feel like in that sense, like that's almost like when I said I was like I think I'm like more calm. I think like being more calm and like just okay with like other things that happen. Like can't control everything, you can't fix everything.
No, you cannot. I think the sooner we can realize that, the better off we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and that's probably something like everybody battles with like every day. It's like some days you're like, oh, I know we're good. And then the next you're like,
not okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how inconsistent our brains are, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've arrived at question number 9. And it's funny, every time I go through these questions, I feel like by the time we get here, we've kind of like answered it, but I'd like to see where your brain goes here. So if you could give a piece of sage advice to high school students now, what would that be?
I think I have a lot. I think like, yeah, I think like the first 2 things would obviously be like, I think like work hard, like listen to your teachers, like they're your teacher for a reason. They've lived more life than you. They're not telling you things just to tell them. Like it's coming from a place of like knowledge, experience, and also like caring. So like take a moment and like absorb that. But also like work hard, because like you're building those habits like early on. So if you're always choosing to like be lazy or not care, like you're going to have a rude awakening at some point down the line. So like work on building like that habit and that routine. And then I have two other ones. And then I would say like probably just like be kind, like just be kind to people. I think in like general, like as you move into like careers and if you go to college or whatever you do in your next step, like be kind to people because you never know when that person is going to pop back up in your life. Like if maybe they're going to be interviewing you one day, or like you have to work beside them. You just have no idea. Like the world is huge and there's so much to see and do, but it's also like very small. It's like, especially when you're just like in one place for a while, you're going to find those connections. And so it means a lot more just to be kind to people because they're most likely going to pop back around, or somebody they know, and people talk to each other.
Yes, they do.
And like, and like there's a reason why like when you're in kindergarten until you die, everybody is always going to be quoting the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated. And there's a reason for that. And then I think probably the last one I would say, and I think this was like a big learning experience, or just like a thing that I've realized, is try to understand like your communication style. Like pay attention to when you get angry. Like what angered you? Was it something that happened? Was it the delivery of something? Like how do you like respond? Like people respond to positive feedback, people respond to negative feedback, and trying to like understand what works for you so that you can then go and communicate to people. Like I appreciate it when things are said to me in like this way. Or if you're talking to me and I don't respond because I'm quiet, it's not because I'm not listening, it's because I'm trying to process, and maybe you're not as articulate as like another person. Like this was something I feel like I just found, like I'm very articulate. It's like I love to talk, I can just talk all day, and like, but not everybody is that way, especially if like you're trying to have like a more serious conversation, and like it might come off like you don't have any thoughts or feelings about the situation, but maybe it's just like they can't respond that quickly. So like I've learned that sometimes with people, maybe you just want to try and write them a letter so that then they can have time to sit with it and process it, and then they can write you back. So I think like it's something that obviously takes time to figure out, but I think like try and be reflective in a moment of like when you have a reaction, like what made you react that way, and then would there be another way to go about the situation to maybe not let you respond or react in like a negative, angry way. I don't know.
It's so valuable. And from my experience, as much as I have to talk as a teacher, I don't like talking. I'm not quick. I'm more of an introvert just naturally. And I feel like I express myself so much better when I can write it down and then look back and say, is this what I really meant? Is this what I really wanted to say? Is this the best way that I can say what I want to say? And so I think that's why writing has become such an important part of my like adult life, because I have a lot of thoughts. There's like a lot that's going on in there, and I can't speak it quickly enough. So I just write it down. I'm like, yes, that's what's on my mind. And then I can feel calmer. I think that's a valuable piece of advice.
Yeah. It's interesting for me to be like the opposite of that, to like then have to like realize like, okay, like maybe it's not that they're not listening, like maybe they're just not like you, Kristen, like they are thinking a different way, and like you just have to try and like, okay, like and I found that like how I said, like I've noticed like my immediate reaction to some things is like that I can just get angry, like I can feel the anger inside of me. So it's like in those instances I've learned like I gotta like go take a walk, remove yourself, calm down, because probably not, I'll be articulate, but probably not saying the things that I really want to say, or that's going to help the situation. So
there's too much right here. I gotta make that calm down.
Yeah. Like, in and out, in and out.
It's true. We're very emotional beings. Like,
Yes.
we need to chill out a little bit sometimes. Okay, so we've arrived at our final question. And this has nothing to do with high school. But it has to do with that self-care piece, right? So what are 3 self-care practices that you do today to help you to center or to regulate yourself?
Mhm. One is definitely, going to dance class. I think probably in general, I've just moving my body is like a huge thing that I have to do. So taking the time too, saying like, I have to go, like this is gonna make me happier, and ignoring any anticipation of maybe how tired I am, like still going, like definitely I'm just very grateful that I'm able to go take dance classes. And so definitely that's definitely my big me time. This one is kind of funny, I think. Well, I don't know if people probably think about it this way, but like really like letting myself take the time to like enjoy my shower. I think like, like you're at work, you're around people. I'm on the train, there's tons of people around me. I go home and my husband works from home still. So like that. And then I mean, dance is my me time. So like whatever, but that's probably like my time of like aloneness. Like, yeah. And like, even if it's like late and I'm like, I gotta get to bed, like just like allowing myself to take that time, followed by like recently, like I've noticed that I just like love doing like a skincare routine, like the smell of like nice lotion. I'm just like, it's just like a spa moment for myself, and it feels like very good. So I think, no matter like, how tired I am or if I'm rushing, like still being like, nope, you still have to like do that. And then a third one, I think just probably getting better at like listening to my body. Yeah, like if I need to just rest for a little bit, or you've been eating like crap recently, like like just like listening and like and being more in tune with like how I'm feeling and trying to like weave that into like every day basically. So it's been interesting. I would probably say one other thing to add for high school students is take care of your body, because you only have one. So
that is 100% true. I see these kids coming in and they're eating Doritos for breakfast, and I'm like,
nope.
What are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself? Whoa, no, stop. Get a banana. Like, drink some milk, drink some water, whatever. Just stop feeding your face with junk, with awful things that don't give you anything other than saltiness and fat.
Yeah. It's so true. Also, like I realized, like even if like one day like I can't even like move, or I don't have time, like, or whatever it is, like I'm not doing anything physical that day, like to wake up and like roll your neck a little bit and like stretch, like waking up your body for the day, I found like is a very important thing. I think that probably started like in the pandemic. I was like in like a 600 square foot apartment. I was like, I don't even have to walk that far to go to the bathroom. Like no movement.
Right. I know. And with the pandemic, it was about like, I'm sitting all day at the stupid computer, doing a remote class. As soon as school was over, I'm like, I'm going outside. I'm going for that 3-mile walk run thing, because I can't be sitting in a basement anymore. I need to get out. And it's funny, I had the interview with Stephanie Lardent, Diazio, sorry. Well, she's now Diazio. And that was a huge focus of our interview, the idea that movement was what she realized like made her happy, made her calm down. And those of us who are of the dancer mover ilk, we all understand that to be true.
Yeah.
just a fact.
Yep. It is. That's like really when I started, it's called, her name is Melissa Wood Health, and she does like Pilates and like yoga. But for me, like I've never been somebody who like enjoyed working out unless it was an actual dance class. So like when I moved to Hoboken, I started going to like yoga and everything. And then I was trying to do like virtual, like in our living room. But then like Tyler was like stepping over me. And I'm like, this does not do it for me. Like it was like, I liked being in another space. And I was like, I think I need to figure something else out. And I found it. And I was telling my mom this morning, I was like, recently I've just been feeling so exhausted, but like, I know that I feel better if I know I'm not like going to dance that evening, to like make sure I wake up and like, even if it's like a 10-20 minute like flow of like something like that, I will instantly feel more energized. Like I need it.
You got to clear the cobwebs.
Yeah.
Everything, like move in all of the ranges of motion, and then, okay, we're good now.
Yes. It helps a ton.
Well, we have come to the end of my list of questions. I can't thank you enough for sitting with me and having our little time together. I missed you so much.
I miss you. Thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you for like all the kind words you've said. I've enjoyed this. If you ever have another one, I'm open.
I will have to, come up with another podcast idea, and we'll collaborate on something.
That would be great.
That's the end of our interview. Thank you for joining us for Change for the Better, the Power of Arts Education.